Welcome back to the Real Power Podcast, episode 2. We have a special guest today sitting across from me, Mr. Matt Drouin, and I'll give you a quick rundown on Matt. Matt is a seasoned real estate investor with a focus on value-add commercial and residential properties here in Rochester, New York. He achieved financial freedom at the age of 33 and has since grown his portfolio to 176 units. He's the host of the Go Big Live Real Estate Podcast, where he helps beginner and experienced investors take down their first large commercial deal. And above all, is a great human being and doing big things for our city. Matt, welcome to the show, brother.
Awesome to be here. Terrified and excited at the same time. So
let's do it, man. Let's get into it. So first thing I wanted to kind of start with is I feel like financial freedom is a theme for so many people these days and trying to figure out how to get there. What is financial freedom to you? And maybe give a little background about like how you got started in this whole journey of trying to achieve it.
Yeah. So when I hear there's like two versions of financial freedom, right? There's the one that's out there in the ether that you see, which is like 100% just bullshit. And then there's like actual true financial freedom, which is basically being able to do whatever you want. I don't consider myself financially free like at all. Okay. I consider myself financially independent, meaning that I do not have to trade my time for dollars anymore to keep the lights on at home and be able to go on vacation with my family and that sort of thing. But financially free to me would be like flying in a G4, like getting served, gold encrusted Wagyu beef, like by a 3 Michelin star chef, like type of like it's like, oh, I can do whatever I want. I was like, there's things that pop into people's mind. You're like, no, you can't do that. You can't afford that. Like,
right.
and I'm not even in a motivational like position to even want to like get to that level, because to be honest with you, I don't even want to work that hard. All right. So I'm just like, I want to build, I want to grow, but there's not any sort of like thing that I'm looking to like build towards from a lifestyle perspective. Like maybe just like spice it up a little bit once in a while.
Sure. Okay.
But yeah, no, I mean, I think that financial freedom is just one of those things that's like used to like manipulate people into like buying info products, that sort of thing. And I'm like really super sensitive about it. Sometimes I have to use those words, but
to get attention though, right?
Yeah, to get attention, which is another thing that drives me nuts, is like just the marketing out there is just insane, and how much more effective it's going to get with artificial intelligence and all that stuff. So
yeah,
but that's a whole nother story.
So what exactly got you started on the whole financial freedom journey? Like how did you get into it?
Mm-hmm. I always knew I wanted to be rich. Okay. Because I grew up, my parents like sold their house in the city of Rochester and took every penny they had to buy a house in Pittsford. It was like, we lived in, like my friends called it, the dark side of Pittsford. It was like the Parrington, Pittsford, like sort of border and that sort of thing, kind of East Rochester. And I was always like growing up, like with my parents, like living paycheck to paycheck. They lived paycheck to paycheck their entire life. And me being in this like inferiority complex of like, well, dude, I want to buy Abercrombie and Fitch clothes. And I had to like basically bust my ass working at like Eckerd Drugs, like making $5.25 an hour to go to the clearance rack to buy some at Abercrombie to like be with the cool kids. And then they'd make fun of me like at school because like, they're like, dude, that was like that looks like Charlie Brown like wore that like sweater. I still have that sweater actually. And so that was just like being like feeling like I wasn't, like we were struggling was really, really in a position I just didn't like being in. And that was kind of the start of it in terms of like getting obsessed with business and success and all this other like horse shit that, 15-year-olds like fantasize about.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where it started.
Yeah. So it almost started from an insecurity almost, which I feel like for a lot of people gets them started on that path, but then you realize like it's so much more when your eyes are open to like what's possible. It's like that doesn't matter anymore. Like what my future can be, then you start to see like this is what it can lead to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where it really like changed in terms of my big aha moment was, I was a kind of like I had this desire, but I was like sort of like a listless, directionless kid. And I just was I was really a follower. And I kind of, had the universe smack me around a bit. My mother struggled with terminal cancer for 10 years. And so first reminder of the universe, like, boom, like tomorrow's not promised.
Yeah.
Like, get your fucking act together, because you're just wandering through life like there's always going to be tomorrow. And there's no greater lie that we can tell ourselves, that there's always tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then, even that experience too, like nothing is more sobering than literally holding somebody's hand while they take their last breaths. Okay. Somebody's deeply important to you, like your parents. And then, but it wasn't enough, right? I kind of like, it was like a kick in the right direction and that sort of thing, in terms of like, okay, I need to I might even have health issues myself, like in terms of genetically and that sort of thing. So all these things are running through my mind as like a young person or a young adult. And then, years later, my dad passed away suddenly from a heart attack in his sleep. Okay. Second, like time when the universe just like smacked me upside the head. Right. That was really like the last moment where I was like, it's like, I can't be a kid anymore. Like, I owned a few investment properties at the time, but I was nowhere near financial independence. My goal was to be financially independent by the time I was 40 years old. The reason why I formed that goal was because my mom's passing. And, she was, I was just on the phone with my brother. Like, she always wanted to go to Europe for her entire life. And she had to get like diagnosed with terminal cancer to be like, I really need to go. And she was like getting pushed around in a wheelchair because she couldn't, like, her body couldn't support her weight anymore because it was that brutal. Right. So she had to experience this thing going through hell that a lot of other Americans like do the same thing. I mean, I remember my first trip to Europe, like people were like, the only Americans I saw there were like 60, 70 years old. And guess what? Like, there's no fucking Americans with Disabilities Act in Europe. Like, everything's upstairs and everything's downstairs. And so I saw these people struggling, and then they would look at me and my friends. They're like, yeah, do it when you're young, kid. And so all these kind of collective confluence of experiences kind of like led to a major why and wake up call. All the death and all this other tumultuous stuff that happened to me as a kid, with my parents like splitting up and my dad being in between marriages and that sort of thing. All that stuff was basically led to me being where I am right now. And it was all nasty shit.
Yeah.
So I think that the strong why was really, really what, really, really what propelled me.
Yeah. Well, that's an extremely strong why. And going through all that darkness it's just painful. It sounds like, but to see what it motivated you to do and the person that it pushed you to become, knowing that, life can be short and you don't know when the end is. And, I think for a lot of us, we think about that and think about the jobs that we're currently in and the life that we could have, but not knowing really how to get out of the situation if we're in a painful one, where to go. So real estate, as you and I know, can be that path for a lot of people. So let's talk about your first deal. So did you said you owned a couple rentals before your parents passing and everything. You had already owned some, or how did you get into your first real estate deal?
So my mom never saw the first property that I bought, but my dad did.
Okay.
The reason for that was not necessarily that it was like, oh, this is my ticket. It was my dad's kicking me out of the house. It wasn't his like dream to have a 20-something-year-old living in his house, and so I wasn't paying rent there. So it was kind of a cool idea for me to be like, well, paying rent probably sucks. Like, some of my friends are doing it, so like that doesn't sound cool. So that was really the first why behind that. I thought that I was going to become like this, rich by like day trading and that sort of thing. And by the way, I lost my ass several times day trading. It just wasn't, I'm not a smart person. So the real estate was like, damn, they were talking about this shit like back in the Bible, like, people like renting property out. So I don't know, they seemed all right, so why don't I do it, right? It's the idiot's business. And so that's really where I got bit by the bug, is like that first property. And it was a hell of a deal too. I mean, I couldn't find anything on the market. So my dad, I was complaining with my dad, and to my dad, he's like, well, look at expired listings in the area you want to live in. And I want to live in the Park Avenue area, which for those people who aren't familiar with Rochester, it's like the area where young people want to live, to be close to bars and get shit faced on a Thursday night and be able to walk home. Right. So that's where I wanted to live. And so nothing was out there that I could like replace my, I don't want to pay rent. I don't want to pay a dime in rent. That was like the number one thing there. So, and my dad was never going to allow me to like make the decision to buy in a bad neighborhood. So I found this property as an expired listing. I was pretty relentless about getting a hold of the owner. The owner was actually a broker. They happened to have the real estate license. They put it in the MLS. I contacted them. Are they still interested in selling? I'm not sure if the owner is still motivated. They had to put on a new roof because the prior buyer required them to put on a new roof, and then the deal fell apart and blah, 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 blah. So, that deal wasn't hard to find, but it was extremely hard to finance. Mm-hmm. At that point in time, I was in real estate for like 3 months, had no tax returns associated with being a real estate agent. And I was trying to get conventional financing on it. And just like no banks wanted to touch me. Yeah. So there was a lot of, calling bank after bank after bank. And finally, there was one that was doing deals out there. This was like 2006. This was things started like, you could kind of see the writing on the wall in terms of subprime loans, that sort of thing. Well, the only way I was able to buy this property was subprime loan, right? They had a cute way of saying it. It was called non-conforming loans. And so the interest rate was 8.8%. Started off, it was a floating rate loan, right? But the numbers from day one worked. Like there was 4 apartments. I was able to move into one of them. I was able to rent out the other 3, and also I was able to get a roommate. I moved up to the attic that like wasn't insulated. Like it was like you had to run the air conditioning, like 80% of the year, and also it was freezing during the winter, like absolutely frigid up there. And so I was able to make $200 a month in cash flow and have all my living expenses for free. The $200 in cash flow went to like O'Callahan's and Monroe Avenue, but no, that was like really where I got bit by the bug.
So house hacking, for those who aren't familiar, is exactly what you did. Mm-hmm. Buying a small multifamily property, living in one of the units, renting out the rest of the units. And it's how I got started in my first deal, buying a duplex. And would you say that that's really the best way for someone to get started in the game, is house hacking?
Absolutely. If the thought's in your mind, do it. Because this is, I've been in real estate as a broker, as an agent for 18 years. This is where it usually ends up. Okay. Couple come to me, we want to buy a 2-family house and, reduce our living expenses and that sort of thing. And they start seeing properties and they're like, oh geez, like these tenants are disgusting, or, I don't want somebody living on top of me. They're like, well, okay. So they change their mind. They change plans midstream. And they say, we're going to buy a single family house, and then we'll buy a multifamily as an investment property later.
Down the road.
Yeah. Guess what? Never fucking happens. All right. Because what happens is that they have lifestyle creep, right? They can never go back. They can look, we're not going to move back into an apartment. They're going to do anything they can. They'll drive Uber. They'll do DoorDash on the weekends in order to, to keep this house going. Right. And what happens is, okay, now you got Target. Now you got Home Goods. Now you got Amazon. Now you got, whatever other website out there that just like, just sets consumers' money on fire, right? To furnish the house, that sort of thing. And so that dream, that idea just dies. Okay. So it's the best way to, and like lifestyle creep is a real enemy. Okay. There's a point in time when my dad was able to take us to Disney World back like when we were kids, right? This is the only time I went with our dad with Disney World. We stayed at like Fleabag motel, towels. I mean, these places were just absolutely just disgusting. Like there was probably I was young at the time. There's probably like prostitution happening out of this place, right? I I used to stay at places like that in college, right? Go to Niagara Falls. We stayed at the quadruple A, motel, and the place was an absolute shithole, right? And then you start to stay at little nicer places and that sort of thing. And now I'm like, dude, I mean, I stayed at JW Marriott a couple of times. Like, I don't think I can go back from there, right? I don't think I can go to a Hampton Inn. So this is like something you really have to be protective of yourself, is like, don't allow yourself to be exposed to like these like sort of excesses early on and have a habit on them, because they're like, it's going to really, really stifle your progress. And the time to start investing is now, right? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. All right. A lot of people think like, well, 20 years ago it's past and my opportunity's gone. And now it turns into tomorrow, next week, next month, next year.
Just keeps getting pushed out into the future. Yeah. Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there with, you don't realize lifestyle creep is a thing until it starts happening to you, and you're stuck in a situation where you're drowning in expenses, and you can no longer you don't have the money to seek out that dream, that investment property, that whatever you wanted to do, because you get trapped. And it's something I push to so many people like my age. I consider myself lucky to have really stumbled upon personal finance and investing and entrepreneurship, because it put me in a mindset while I was in my early 20s to, this is what I have to do. I need to do it now, because I know that down the line I might not be able to. And that's just something I try to preach to my younger brothers who are in the same situation, and just spreading the knowledge that while you're young, this is the time to do it and figure it out, and it'll change your life.
First of all, you have like the probable life expectancy, like to just by the law of compound interest alone.
Yeah.
And then also when you're young, like you can get just multiple beat downs and like prison shankings, like just like stabs to the gut, like it's over this time period, like that you can actually recover from those things.
Yeah.
So it's this is the time to do it. I mean, fortunately, I started when I was young. I started like, I joke, like I started in real estate when I was in diapers at 22 years old. And there was a lot of things that led me to creating that. A lot of stuff that was not very pleasant to make me start early on, but now is the time to start, because you're always going to have compound interest to start in your favor starting now.
Let's talk about your first $1 million Burr deal. I want to hear the story on that. And first of all, if you could define what Burr is for people who don't know, and kind of break down the details of that deal.
So the Burr term was defined or coined by Brandon Turner for the Bigger Pockets podcast, and it stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. And it is essentially, boil it down to its essence is that you can eliminate capital as a constraint, like access to cash as a constraint to growing your portfolio to whatever, right? You never have to be constrained by the amount of capital you have, because you basically take the capital that you start with and you add value to a property. You increase its value, the value of the business, and then you bring that property back to the bank. It's like, I bought this property, I bought it for $1 million. It's now worth $1.5 million. So give me a bigger loan on the property, because the value of the collateral, the value of the business improved. And so you can take that, $200,000 to $300,000 and keep recycling that over and over again from a $1 million deal to a $2, $3, $5, $10 million deals. But it can be, a lot of people talk about doing it on the residential side of things. Mm-hmm. I did it early on. I didn't even know I was doing it because Bigger Pockets wasn't even around at that point in time. But the magical thing about commercial, 5 units plus multifamily, let's define what we're talking about in terms of commercial. 5+ units multifamily or industrial, mixed use, retail buildings, whatever. You're not even, and I say this a lot, you're not even like participating in the real estate business. You're in the business buying business. Like you're buying a business that's evaluated based upon its income. And that is like so much more scalable. Like I would pat myself on the back if I bought something for like $150,000 and 5 years later it was worth $180,000. Well, there's deals that bought one for $175,000, pushed it to $600,000 in valuation within 12 months. Bought a property for $1.5 million, pushed it to $3.25 million in valuation within 12 months. So you take these same concepts and just bolt on like the, like some, little different widgets, that sort of thing, as it applies to commercial and how it mechanically works. And you can take this to the moon.
Yeah, it's insane. And just to break that down a little more for people, when he says it's commercial deals are more of a business, it's because it's not valued on, in residential, a house is valued on what the house down the street sold for, what they call comps. Mm-hmm. In commercial deals, it's based on how much the property actually makes, your net operating income, and that in turn, if you can boost the net operating income that the property brings in, it's worth more to the person who wants to buy that deal next. And in turn, your net worth can just skyrocket very quickly versus staying in the residential space.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then picking on that deal, it was a lot of times, like I've gone back, it's like I just kind of go through life. I've gone through my business life and done things like very like guerrilla warfare, like, just, trying shit out.
Yep.
Just following my instincts, following like whatever type of like, how would I say it? Like, I don't know. I kind of call it like the Holy Spirit, right? That just like pulls you in a certain direction. I'm just going to go this way. Right. And sometimes you get rewarded, and a lot of people kind of look at that and it's like, oh, that's luck. And you can also tell yourself that was luck, but then you're just like, well, what was all the things that I did expose myself to and the people I talked to that led to the confluence of this moment happening? And then reverse engineering that and be like, okay, I need to do more of that shit. Mm-hmm. Okay. So this is a deal that came to me off market through a commercial real estate broker. It was somebody that I knew, someone I had a great relationship with, and somebody that really trusted me a lot, right? We worked together at the Cabot Group, which is a property management company. He was responsible for the commercial part of this like mixed use portfolio that I had, and I was responsible for the residential multifamily when I was in third-party asset management. And we had a great relationship, right? And I talked about the properties that I owned and the stuff that I did and my track record and that sort of thing. And then I kept in touch with them because we liked each other. And so that led to him thinking about me. Hey, Matt, I know you own some properties in the Park Avenue area. I got a properties coming up there, right there, smack dab in the middle of where you own properties. So some people can call that luck or kismet or whatever. But taking those things, like everybody has those like breadcrumbs that they can be like, oh, this is what led to that. Like, let me double down on that. It was $1 million deal. I had to have $300,000 in capital, which I did not have. I had all my money tied up in some major rehab I had going on at the time. And so this is the first time, like I knew right from the beginning, like when I started this, like I wanted to do bigger deals because I wanted to make more financial impact on getting towards my goals. And so I just went to jump for it. I got under contract. I put the earnest money deposit down. It was like $50,000 off of a credit card advance. And I was just like, okay, it's now or never. Like I've been, letting this little bitch tell me, this little bitch inside myself tell me that I couldn't do commercial because I had to have a certain number of units to do big deals, or I had to have a certain amount of experience. And then I just started questioning myself. I was like, when is going to be the right time? And so I had to go and raise $300,000 in capital. It was the first time I ever had to do that, right? And this is the thing: is I went to friends and family first. I already know those people. I wouldn't invest in anybody that didn't know, like, and trust. And I was like, okay, well, my family, I think, knows, likes, and trusts me, so I go to them first, right? And so I was able to cobble together this $300,000 from 4 separate people, and that's how I was able to take that deal down, right? So I bought it for $1 million. I had a plan on it in terms of knew the markets were the rents were below market significantly. It was 100% occupied for 20 years. Big indication that it's got below market rents. I was able to push that value of the property from $1 million to $1.6 million over like a 12-month period. And I was able to refinance that property. I waited to refinance that property a couple years later, but I was able to pay 100% of the $300,000 back to my investors. And that one deal alone replaced my wife's income because I was trying to, figure out things for her because I started this journey by myself. Pays us like $60,000 a year in cash flow. One deal.
Incredible. One deal replaced your wife's income.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a lot of people are like, well, what about your income? I was like, dude, I was the idiot that it took me 11 years of letting the little bitch inside dictate like what was possible and not possible. and banging my head against the wall, 11 years, 25 properties, 76 doors to basically do that. So that's what it took to do my income. And it was like every single deal I did took years off my life. And so now I'm like, that's okay, right? That's okay. Every deal is going to take years off your life, but I want to be compensated handsomely as a result of it, not chump change.
Let's talk about your advice to investors trying to get into the game in 2024. So I know you're a coach now, coaching people how to get into their first big deal. Would you recommend someone, let's say they have no units, they're just trying to start out and get their feet wet. They want financial freedom, and they want to know the best path to get there. Would you recommend they start the way that you did, buying residential and starting slow? Or would you say go big right away, find someone who's competent and knows what they're doing and has a track record, and partner with them to make it happen? Like what would be your advice to that new investor?
Yeah. So one thing is get started, do a deal. Damn it, is something I say all the time. A lot of us can be like, all the options out there, like, STR and MTR and LTR and, reverse squashing of the deck chair method, like all this bullshit that you see out there. It's just like, just do a deal. I would only encourage somebody to do commercial right off the bat with a bigger deal if they have a shit ton of money.
Okay. Yeah.
Like an absolute shit ton of money. So then they have like some capital and breathing room to buy something, make some mistakes. But I'd say that if you're, and if you have like a great mentor that's on your team and that sort of thing, then that's okay. Right. But if you're like, yeah, I don't really have that much money, I need to raise capital, it's gonna be difficult to raise capital from people that, when you haven't done it before or done some sort of version of it, just a different order of magnitude, like a 2-family. If you can do a 2-family deal, you can do a 20-unit deal. It's the same stuff. So I would encourage house hacking. In terms of like starting, surrounding yourself with people. And here's one thing as a newsflash, like you do not need a coach to buy your first residential property. There's so much information out there that's completely free.
Yep.
There's networks out there that are, a lot of them local in your market that, we have one here in Rochester, New York, FRIA. Like there are so many people that want to help put the ladder down for you to put you in the right position to do what you want to do in terms of landing your first investment property or first, owner occupant, multifamily property, that it's, there's so many resources out there. You just have to go out and reach out and grab them.
Yep.
They're there for you. And you don't need to deal with like bullshit guru gatekeepers that, want you to pay them for information on how to land your first smaller residential deal. It's very formulaic.
Yeah.
So
100%. Like all the info you need, like you said, is out there to get that first deal done, and just lean on your network and the people in your local market. Like you said, going to meetups and putting yourself out there and seeking out those people who can help you get that first deal done. You don't need a coach, but I would say that having people in your corner to help you when something comes up and you don't know what to do and you need direction, having that group of people to lean on is huge.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, just like, find your tribe. There's this whole thing like, figure out how you can add value to somebody. Like if you go to a meetup, generally people just want to have a beer and talk to people and not feel like freaks. And if you come at people humbly and you're like, hey, I really want to figure this out. Like, can you help me? Because a lot of people struggle with because you hear this in a Bigger Pockets podcast and other podcasts, like, well, before you ask anybody for any type of help, can I have a half an hour of your time? Like, I really need some help just wrapping my head around this whole thing. By the way, don't use the term pick your brain because people hate that shit.
Or get coffee.
Yeah, or get coffee. So that people generally want to help you. Don't abuse it. Educate yourself first. Like before you start asking people for a ton of help, educate yourself in terms of listening to podcasts, reading books. If you can't read a book, then listen to an audiobook. So that when you are making an ask of somebody that they know that you've already invested a certain amount. I hate when people come up to me and they're just like, shiny object syndrome. I just heard this is a great idea. And like, where do I start? And I was like, and I just start like, they don't even know what a fucking roof is. Like, so, this is where you need to like, invest in yourself a little bit first before you go out there making asks.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And, as someone who has done a couple deals, I wouldn't consider myself experienced at all. I'm still a newbie myself, but other people asking me, you want to help, but you want to make sure that they're at least at that baseline foundational knowledge of they know what they're talking about, because that's a lot different than trying to train someone from the ground up that knows anything about real estate investing versus someone who's done their homework and they know exactly what they're looking for and they're seeking advice for this specific thing. Those are two different things. And I think just be the second person and be that person who goes the extra mile before reaching out to someone that you want info from or you want to build a relationship with. What's your why? What keeps you going? Why are you doing all this?
Yeah, so I think about this often because sometimes I even question, like, why the hell am I doing this? There's a difference between doing what you love and passion. All right? I think that passion is something that doesn't feel good very much. I mean, it's literal, like Greek or Latin root is passion, which means suffering. All right. So I think that kind of helps me contextualize like what passion is about. And passion can sometimes feel like a burden. Like you feel like you're like carrying up that cross in your back, like up Golgotha, So, so my why now is it changes. It's changed over time, but my why now is like extending beyond my life. When I was achieved financial independence by the time I was 33 years old, I had to go through the painful process of reinventing myself because there was something that I was literally obsessed with and thinking about every single day for 11 years, and that was financial independence by the time I was 40. I achieved it at 33, and now I was like, what's next, right? And I think the purpose of life is having a purpose. So I made a promise to myself, like after, and I went through depression as a result of this. It was really brutal. I was just like, all right, I achieved this thing and I really wasn't like figuring out what was next for me. And so, cause I thought it was just like, yeah, I'll just, I'll wake up I'll wake up when I naturally wake up, and I was powerlifting at the time. So I was like, hey, I rest like 3 to 5 minutes in between sets. So it's like, I'm just going to power lift in the morning and go to lunch with my friends and that sort of thing. And then it was just like, it wore off really quickly in terms of that. And that's the one thing with entrepreneurism. I definitely think entrepreneurism is an absolute like disease. It's like a mental health disorder, because I think that you'll never truly be like satisfied.
You always reach for more. Yeah.
Yeah. It's because I think that, and generally, like, I think that in general, I'm happy, but there's a lot of times that I'm actually not happy. Like there's times where I'm actually struggling. There's times when I'm just not really happy with what's going on, like with where my expectations met reality. Sure. And that sort of thing. So, I'm not this person that's like, happy pills and, sunshine, rainbows and lollipops and that sort of thing. So entrepreneurism is like, yes, there is a strong why that's important. My next why is basically I want to create a net worth equivalent to $20 million. Right now, I'm a $5 million net worth. And I want to do that by the time I'm 60 years old. Right now, I'm 40. All right. The reason behind that is because I want to have economies of scale to have my wealth live for multiple generations after I pass. Mm-hmm. And this isn't just to help, to help my kids, because I think that amount of money would like absolutely just like spoil the fuck out of them.
I was going to say, little brats. Are you going to give it to your kids or like?
No, my idea is that setting up a trust where this money is invested and allocated in very strategic ways. Most of it being through private real estate lending. So 60% of it would be for like mortgage lending. 20% of it would be like real estate equity. And then various portions of that afterwards would be like, seed capital for like angel investings and working capital for mid-sized like local companies, that sort of thing, but something that has like a local focus to the community. And my idea is that my kids would sit on the board of this trust, and have, and then, get compensated for it. Right.
Sure.
So, cause I think it's important for them. Like, I don't think like, I don't ever want my kids to be in like survival mode, because survival mode turns to like very bad decision making. But I want them to be hungry enough where like they want something more for themselves. And I think that spark that happens is really like, and people go down that rabbit hole, is really where people discover themselves and who they really are and what they're made of.
Absolutely. I love that. What if your kids are like, fuck you, Dad, I don't want to do this, I want to do something else? Are you going to strongly recommend that they continue in the path that you're in, or what's your opinion?
I want them to do whatever they're like, whatever is like they're extremely interested in, as long as it isn't like hardcore drugs and that sort of thing. If it's acting and that sort of thing, like my daughter, I'm just like, I watch her every day. I'm like sort of like seeing like, okay, what are these sort of like innate things that she's sort of developing interest towards? And she's kind of like very dramatic, and she likes to act, and she likes to sing and dance, and she's super social and that sort of thing. I have no idea where that's going to go.
Yeah.
I drive her to school every day, and we drive by my buildings in downtown Rochester. And I'm like, hey, and she points out the window. She's like, hey, Daddy, those are your buildings.
That's
I was
so
like,
cool.
Yeah. And I was like, you're gonna own them someday. And she's like, no, I don't want those things. So I don't know if she's gonna have any interest in real estate. I mean, my idea behind them being like on the board or trustees and that sort of thing is just so they feel involved in like the legacy I was trying to create for the multiple, basically branches of our family tree, God willing, into the future. And also for them to like understand like, all right, this is how like investing, this is how investing happens. Right. So, and they can do whatever they want, in terms of what serves their, like with their passions and interests, that sort of thing. So I have no idea whether, I really don't care. I just don't want them to be like struggling or feeling like they're like walking through life with no control.
I love that. Yeah. And I think just having the financial security to have the ability to figure it out and not feel pressured and have money be a limiting factor in figuring out what they want to do, that's huge. So good for you. Well, this has been awesome, man. As we wrap up, one last question I have. Any favorite book, podcast, anything that's helped you most significantly in your life and your journey as an investor, entrepreneur? Is there any one book that's really stood out to you?
There's so many that, because I'm trying to rewind back when, I guess a really impactful book to me was, this isn't a recent one, but this is an old one, Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. There's definitely a lot of stuff in there that's a little bit old fashioned, but the main gist of it, the magic of thinking big, how to win friends and influence people.
Love that
all
one.
those classic ones. People forget about those things. And most recently, the one thing is definitely a book that I recommend constantly to people. Yeah, that's where I'm at right now in terms of my recommendations.
I love it. How to Win Friends and Influence People is my favorite. And I think it's, those are, tried and true principles of human behavior and how people act. And those kind of things will never change no matter where technology or the future goes. People are people, and learning to build relationships, authentic relationships is a skill worth having. So I reread that book all the time. I love that one. Where can people connect with you, learn more about what you're doing? Let's plug your podcast, the Go Big Live podcast. Go listen to it.
Yeah. I make myself super available across all the platforms. So whether it's Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, I blow up all those things, man, because this is also, I not only create the content to try to create value and inspiration or education to people that are out there that are interested in entrepreneurship or real estate or whatever, but also to serve as like basically an asset for like, my kids to be able to hang out with me at some point in time in the future.
That's cool. I promise.
Yeah. Once I've crossed the Rainbow Bridge. Right. So yeah, any of those platforms are great. I'm an open book, and, I'm willing to, and definitely FRIA. I got to plug FRIA, Freedom First Real Estate Investors Association. Check it out, especially if you're involved with the real estate investing industry, regardless of where you are in your path, whether you're a newbie, wannabe, or seasoned veteran. We can use everybody there. And then, yeah, my podcast, Go Big Live, is definitely one that you should listen to if you're looking to learn about how to do bigger deals.
Love it, man. Well, thank you for being here. And for those still listening, appreciate you. We'll see you on the next episode. Peace.
Peace.